Welcome to Literature to Lens, where we explore the fascinating journey from the written word to the screen. And today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Mrityunjay Sharma, who is also author and entrepreneur and will be sharing his insights on the portrayal of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar in modern media, particularly on OTT platforms and a lot more. Now, a very warm welcome to the show, sir. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you for having me here.
Now, to begin with, what do you think people from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar are often depicted negatively? What do you think is the reason behind?
How it has come to this is very specific. In the recent past, what we have seen, the kind of incidents, the kind of politics, the kind of social changes that have come in these regions, they have gone through a lot of churning, right? And a lot of incidents that have happened in the recent 20-30 years, I would say specifically. Not very desirable ones, very extreme ones, the kind of murders, kidnappings and so on. So it feels like, and then how they are depicted on screen and how people consume it through screens or newspapers or radios or whatever. Only those negative depictions keep coming out, right? And that is what people consume across the country, and hence they see, they think everybody there is, a part of that entire narrative. So yeah, I would say either way, not completely wrong, not completely justified either.
So in your opinion, it's balanced?
I would not say balanced, not at all. I say to represent any region or people of any region, you need a much deeper understanding of the region.
Okay.
Why is it so? Rather than just the very superficial portrayals of those on the screens, right? So to even understand, let's say, why people, so there's a very strong historical reason why we say the people of North India are slightly more, aggressive in their behavior, which is what we say there were invaders who had come in from the northwest and then hence they had to fight and so on. So I think some of the historical context, some context, societal reasons is very, very important.
Okay, so you say that it's a historical past.
And societal reasons, the societal complexity there. So for examples, the kind of societal structures that are there, the caste structures that are there, the discriminations, the differences, what they suffer and what they, how they feel in their villages and those societies, it changes and it affects their behavior.
Do you reckon it still prevails in some parts of the society?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. To what extent?
It would have reduced in very small measures. It still retains itself in very larger measures, I would say. To deny it would be to deny the existence of human society in those regions.
Okay. Okay. So you've also written a book called Broken Promises. Tell us something about that. It is also based on the era perhaps from 98 to 2005, and you have mentioned a lot of things in that book. What does it say?
So Broken Promises essentially talks about, it talks about right from the formation of Bihar in 1912 to the major events before independence, after independence, and how it reached till 1990, right? And from 1990 to 2005 is what the book majorly focuses on.
Okay.
This has been era of major social churn in Bihar, a major social churn. A lot of, we often hear about a lot of lawlessness, a lot of very strange incidents, caste wars. There were caste wars and massacres, almost 60 of them in those 10 years, and almost 600 people were killed. There were private caste militias. There were murders like unseen, like a district magistrate was linked to that. Politicians, criminals were so intertwined that it was difficult to differentiate.
So many points, I must say, that you have mentioned in your books. I would like to ask you that what goes inside the mind of a viewer in the modern era when it comes to the OTT platforms? Bihar specifically and Uttar Pradesh, their portrayal specifically in OTT platform is not that great. It has to be changed. But what do you think, why the makers are portraying that particular role? To attract the viewers?
So on two levels, I would say. One, I would say the understanding of the complexity itself is a problem.
Okay.
So for somebody who's sitting out of Bombay, who's never visited these states or never, I'm not saying it's his fault to not have visited those states or not been born there, but at least has not made the effort to read very extensively the history, the culture, the social implications, everything. They would not be able to understand
And
that.
Apart from them, do you also agree a viewer who is watching a particular movie, I won't name it, and is watching that portrayal of these states, would certainly be frightened, even if it's about going there. A viewer would not go by merely seeing what is happening on the OTT platforms.
Yes, I'll come there. So in fact, that's the first part of who's making that movie, right? And the second part is more the commercial angle itself. The moment you make the movie so complex and you do not have clear blacks and whites and you have grey characters and saying, okay, he's also not wrong, they are also not wrong, I think that the scale of the viewership goes down. Nobody wants what I understand the viewership of today, right, which is the mass viewership that we talk about, that the OTT caters to. They want something simplistic. There has to have a villain, there has to have a hero, right, against all odds, those kind of things. And hence, I think that real character portrayal and all the OTT, what I've seen recently, or the movies also, what I see, there are clear blacks and whites, one villain, one hero, which is generally not the case in any of the scenarios, you would say.
Okay, so do you see them changing in future?
I don't know. I would want it to mature. So there are some very good movies and series also which have done very good justice. I would also say that, right? And they have done well as well. I think there's a certain maturity which anyway our OTT series or Bollywood is going through. In fact, lately we have seen such beautiful movies coming out of small production houses, right, which are wonderful and not around those beaten, paths of having a hero and a villain and so on.
Yeah, and they are even liked by the viewers so much so that as we compare that to a big budget movie, I mean, they are winning in that matter.
Yes. So definitely. So there's a certain level of maturity which is coming into play. I definitely agree to that. And just one point there also what I missed is, when somebody wants to create a movie on UP and Bihar, the best ones ideally would be the ones who have come from there. So the participation currently is also very low, or people from that region in Bollywood and the film industry. I think as that keeps going up, so let's say we have more Manoj Tiwaris, we have more Pankaj Tripathis and so on, I think those depictions will start getting better and better and more such content will come in.
Okay. Have you seen any positive examples or portrayals, that break these stereotypes?
So very difficult to pick. Actually, whatever I'm thinking of, the recent ones, all of them are generally based on
something you can remember and share with us.
Something good. So let's say the movie on that Super 30.
Okay.
That's a very good representation. Now think of this. Come to think of this. Somebody and the two people involved, Anand Kumar and Abhyanand sir, who started it, in fact. Two people who pick up 30 students from the most impoverished backgrounds, irrespective of their caste, religion or whatever. They keep themselves in their hostels, they provide them food, clothing and everything. From the poorest of the backgrounds who have never even imagined studying in colleges.
Correct.
And 30 of them appear and 28, 29 of them cracking ITJs. This is impossible anywhere else. It is, and hence I say, when I talk about the portrayals of Bihar, I may have bias for that state, but some of the most hardworking, dedicated people you would see in the world, working against odd. Maybe it's the upbringing or the environment they have come up in. We faced so many hardships and we know of so many things that the smaller things don't deter us anymore, right? And hence those kind of stories should come out. Also, like let's say the example of Manji, the story, the mountain man. This is the story of Dasrath Manji, who Nawazuddin Siddiqui played it in Manji movie. He carved out an entire pathway, so-called road, from a mountain with a chisel and a hammer.
Correct.
Just because his wife had died crossing that mountain.
Correct.
Yeah, what a story of grit and determination, and what a positive. That's a story of Gaya in Bihar. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And certainly we can't leave behind the food and the polite language.
Yes, definitely. And exactly, that's what I'm saying. So there are so many good things to talk about. There's so much positivity to talk about. But sadly what has happened is, what has gained more prominence is, and that may be because of easier eyeballs or whatever, crime fascinates people, those kind of things, the Bihari accent fascinates people or whatever. Most of the movies or the series that get made are more on the lines of those itself. Yeah.
So how has your personal background influenced your views on this subject?
So as I said, I have seen these things happen in front of my eyes, right? Maybe not personally, but so I quote a my book starts with an incident, the preface of the book, wherein there's a massacre called Bara massacre that happened in 1992, in which 34 people were slain by Naxalites in a village in Gaya in Bara. So one of my aunts lives in that village, and when the next day the newspapers carried the reports of that massacre, one of the names that was mentioned was Sanjay. Sanjay happened to be my cousin. Right? And so in a very frenzy, we arranged for a trekker vehicle, and we all went to that village, and everybody was crying and so on. But when we reached there, thankfully, it was some other Sanjay, and it was not him. So I was 6 years old then.
What is your choice of subjects when you start writing the book? Broken Promise is one. Apart from them?
I'd want to write on something very complex, something very related to the ground, social dynamics, because I feel somehow that gets missed out in the conversations. Those get so simplified that, so for example, I'm just quoting, when we talk about North-South divide in India, it gets so simplified to food choices and languages and so on, that we miss out on the entire history and why that divide may have been created for thousands of years and why it has come to that now. So there, when you go into the social dynamics, there's a lot of such interesting phenomena and things to learn and discuss about that I would certainly want to write on something as complex.
Yes. There is much more.
Yes. You read on it, and I have read some bit on it. I would not say I've read very extensively on it. You read some of the Sudha Murthy's book, in fact, very simplistic ones. But they connect, they have, she says there's so much natural connection between North and South.
Historical significance.
Yes. Any of the historical, books or, religious books you pick up, it talks about, in fact, of entire Ramayana circuit, it goes through the entire North to South, right? None of the regions are missed out, so as to say.
Correct.
So there's a lot of connection, historical connection. We must miss out on that. And we talk about only the superficial appearances and languages and so on, which could be just a manifestation of maybe the geographies, the climate and so on. But let's also talk about the other aspects. So let's say a caste in the north, we have caste in the south as much. Right? It's not different. So we need to talk about it a lot more.
Definitely. What message you hope people take away regarding the representation of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar particularly?
Again, I would say maybe people should invest more time in understanding the complexities rather than taking it on their face values. They should also understand that cinema or OTT series may not be the perfect representations because they are catering to commercial reasons also, right? So
what else could be, if not OTT?
Anything. In fact, I'm saying the newspaper coverages, even of incidents, let's say, they may not be, you need to read. So for the same incident, and this I did for my book also, for the same incident, if you read 4 different coverages, you would understand there was much more complexity than what is reported in just one newspaper on one periodical. Correct. So the more you read and try to understand, talk to the people from there. So most of my understanding from other regions.
Report from ground zero.
Not report, at least just speak to them. So most of my understanding of any region in the country, or in fact the world, I would say, I've not traveled to the West still. But most of my understanding has come from talking to people who have been there, lived there, they live there, they live their daily lives. You just talk to them and you would understand that there's much beyond what is just being reported through social media or movies. So let's say, for the simplistic example would be, if I say I understand US just by watching the Hollywood movies, I would be the biggest fool, right? It cannot be, they cannot be the source of my understanding of the US.
Definitely. So, I mean, there's a difference, when you read newspapers or when you see something on OTT platform, and then when you yourself go to that particular region and talk to people.
Yes.
You get a lot.
Even, I would say, let's say, I stay in Ranchi, even my neighboring district. Let's say, so Delhi, let's say even Ghaziabad, somebody who's not been to Ghaziabad and just spoken to people from there or heard things about there. The first day, and just visualize this, you go to Ghaziabad, you would see 10 different things that would just change your view.
Portrayal and depiction is wrong, but a guy sitting in some other part of the country would only be seeing about a particular state via OTT platform or a newspaper. A person can't go there. So how do you think this perception could be changed?
I think the sources need to increase. So having a view of through just one source would not be the right thing. Whatever source would that may be, right? And again, I said the number of sources increased, the number of input points would increase, and then the perceptions would be much more balanced.
Okay, so I mean, talking about sources, you have different OTT platforms. It's just not one, but perhaps each and every platform is depicting one same thing. Now what?
Not really. There's some difference. So the OTT platforms has, I would say, that's a revolutionary thing that has happened in the film industry in India, at least. The real democratization of content has happened because of this. Now, you're right in saying that most of the content that is coming out is more of so towing the same line in terms of the similar kind of politics and crime and so on. But some, I would say, so for example, let's say Alapata Ladies. Right?
That's a very popular
I don't know if it's based out of Bihar or so.
Grabbing eyeballs.
Grabbing eyeballs, right? So some of these smaller ones, right? They are picking up certain different themes, right? So I'm saying as the number increases, let's say even a 10% depicting something else, when the total number rises, the 10% rises, right? So I would say gradually that would start increasing, and then what happens also, the filmmakers also realize that we have already saturated this zone. There's too much crime that has happened.
Correct.
So let's pick up some other area, right? So then they would start searching for some other area.
And that becomes hit apparently.
Definitely.
When you choose a other angle, that grabs eyeball.
Exactly.
How do you see that?
Yes, and hence I'm saying, so the first levels at any place, in anywhere, the first levels you want to see the most popular things from there, right? Or the most, when that gets exhausted, no, every filmmaker or writer even, they want to create a niche in something, they want to depict something else. They're in search for that something else. And there is those movies like Super 30 and Manji and those come up. And that's brilliant, I would say. That's brilliant. And that would keep coming. That's my very, not just expectation, I would say I'm very hopeful about that. That's going to happen. And because specifically there are so many examples and stories of grit, of determination, of people rising from those, the bottom of the pyramid to the best. So I know of personally such many stories where people who did not have food on the table, really food on the table, right? They went on to become, civil servants.
Definitely.
Right? And those are stories of inspiration, and they'll come to the fore.
Definitely. And people are even liking it, and they're a complete source of inspiration for a person who's perhaps appearing for a UPSC exam. Watching these movies definitely inspire them. How do you react to it?
Yes, definitely. But again, I would say there also, the UPSC thing has become too cliched. That's applaudable.
Or perhaps it has come to light now.
I think so. In Bihar, UPSC is like, so there's a very commonplace joke in other states. The kids start learning ABCD. In Bihar, they start learning with UPSC.
I understand, but that's a particular region. But now, do you agree with the point that in other areas also within the country, people have become more aware about it through social media platforms?
Yes, definitely. They would not be aware earlier. They are more aware now. That's a positive thing. That's what I'm saying. That's a very positive thing. I would want more things to be explored. Yes.
Like what? If you could just explain, if you could just elaborate a bit.
So for example, that Super 30 example itself, I'm saying, that's a wonderful story. I love that story because of these two people, the wonders that they did. I want some certain examples of those kinds to come up. That would be wonderful.
And Manji, on the other hand, talks about the zeal and grit and determination and hard work.
Yes.
And a pure example of, if you are a hard-working person, nothing is impossible.
He chiseled a mountain in 30 years.
Yeah, definitely.
Who would be mad enough to do that?
Definitely, but like I was saying, it's a zeal and grit and nothing else. And the sky is limit. So that's how they say it. But looking forward, what changes do you hope to see in the portrayal of these regions, in media, and what steps can creators take to ensure a more nuanced representation?
Quite a difficult question. I would say, again, creators, what they can do is, again, as I said, they first need to enhance their own understanding before delving into the topic. Just because it looks interesting, they should not delve into it. So for example, let's say Israel and Palestine looks very interesting to me in terms of the dynamics, the socio-cultural, you know, things and the conflict. But I'm not the right authority to write on Israel or Palestine. I cannot just read 10 papers and write on it. I would do such a bad job at it. I know that.
Okay. And so do you are trying to say that to go at the ground zero is important to write about anything?
So the best thing would be to go, but even if that's not possible, I would say just about reading and watching movies. So let's say, I would say you read 10 books on these regions, the best 10 books, that would be a good input enough. You read you see some of the best movies that have been made on these regions. For example, we talk about some of these famous movies. We don't talk about Shul. The way Shul depicted Bihar in 1998, it is such realistic, such pure cinema. I appreciate that movie like anything, right? It may not have been such a commercial hit. So taking those sources, the real sources, and just studying it, putting in that effort to understand. Even the other part would be the characters who are portraying those roles. What is their own understanding of those regions? That's very important. So for example, somebody just giving a fake accent. Yeah, in other states, people may not be able to differentiate. But for people from those regions, they say, he's just doing a shoddy job. No, he's not really has that accent. So for example, what connections do they have from that place? Are they trying to do justice to those roles? Do they have a social background that is able to understand where that is coming from? The accent is one such part. The facial expressions, what they say, how they speak is that part. So I think as in any other field, art form, I would say, the more effort you put into it, in understanding it, the complexities, and then depicting it, it becomes better and better.
Definitely. So my final question before I let you go, there are many aspiring writers, you know, out there, and since you have just completed your first book, what advice do you want to give it to them when they start writing? What are the key points they need to, you know, look at and keep in their mind while writing the book? And especially, you know, when it's about choosing a particular subject.
Perfect. So some of the pointers that I have gone through is through my personal experiences. First, you should not write to make money or become famous or, you know, those extraneous considerations. You should write because you want to write about something. You should write because you really want to explain something. You want to communicate something. You want people to know about something, specifically non-fiction. Second, when you write, you should not involve, so while of course it will have your views and, you know, you should not get personal about it, especially in non-fiction, because you want everybody to read it. So as with news, you would say, you have to be very factual. You have to read multiple sources, be very factual, reference it. References are very, very important. Because what you're writing it, you have a responsibility to say, if I've written it, I have checked it thoroughly and then I've written it. That's your primary responsibility as a writer. Even if when we write on complex topics, I would say, even if it is very complex, it need not be boring. So often what we do is we say, this is a very complex topic, it is academic, what can I do about it? I slightly disagree there. And this is how I have written my book also.
So you're saying that, you know, there are ways wherein you can creatively write.
Yes.
No matter what the subject is.
Definitely. It can be interesting. It can be made interesting in certain ways. Right? How the audience would, there has to be a flow. The language should be breezy. It should be about, so for example, I put in a lot of anecdotes, I put in a lot of facts and figures, which is easier for the people to understand. So for example, let's say a very simple example, let's say saying something in percentage terms, vis-a-vis saying in numbers actually. It's much more easy to understand. Right?
Alright, so thank you so much, and we appreciate your dedication to challenging stereotypes and advocating for a more balanced and nuanced representation. To our audience, we hope today's conversation has sparked thought and reflection. It's crucial that we continue to question and explore how media shapes our perceptions of different regions and cultures. Thank you for joining us on Literature to Lens. Stay curious, keep questioning, and continue exploring the rich tapestry of literature and film. Until next time.